Welcome, fifth graders, to Myth, day two, our second day in the exploration of the genre myths. Sorry, that's hard for me to say. It just feels weird coming out, rolling off my tongue. So let's start where we normally do with our videos. Let's talk about what our objectives, what we are hoped to accomplish today. Our learning targets are: you will review the features of myths, and that'll be the next slide in which we'll talk about what a myth should have, or what they mostly have. We will read and analyze a myth. We have a new one for you. And again, this is one that didn't make it into your packet, but it is in the text for closed reading, which is the books by the Water Fountain, so you can always grab it there. And then we will compare and contrast two myths using a graphic organizer. And if I recall correctly, the graphic organizer is in your packet. Now, it might look different than the one in this presentation because of what I was pulling from. The website is slightly different than than some of the handouts, so I'm actually probably going to be making new copies and handing them out tomorrow, now that I think about it. So we will start here and then we will go forward. So, all right, so our next slide, we're going to actually review the features of myths, okay? All right, so features of myths, you can tell that's where we are because it says so right here. Myths often take place before time or recorded history as we know it began. Okay, they normally take place well before any of us or anyone was alive, and they're used to really set the background for things around you. Myths have gods, goddesses, and heroes with supernatural powers. The vast majority of myths do focus on, especially when we look at the Greek and the Roman, the Egyptians, they really focus on gods, goddesses, and then some of the heroes. Myths have characters that are human or human-like and experience human emotions. And that's a big thing because even the gods get angry and the gods get jealous and things like that in a lot of myths. And the gods get upset. And it's their anger that you really, because of that, you have Zeus with his lightning bolts and things like that, that really that are the cause of things. Okay, when he gets angry. In myths, characters often perform heroic tasks or go on quests. They're trying to solve something, they're trying to win something. With yesterday's story, Thor and Loki were trying to get Thor's hammer back, so things like that. Myths often explain the world view of a people or culture and may have religious elements. So oftentimes it's how they interpret what is happening around them and how they interpret kind of their understanding. And it is oftentimes, as we look at it as 21st century learners, we look at it as very simplistic or unrealistic, but it's what they had. And it's so one of the things that we need to do when we look at myths and mythology is we don't judge them because they're stupid, they didn't understand. That's not what it's about. It's about looking and understanding their stories, because myths often explain the origins of the world, its creatures or elements in nature, and they didn't have the sophistication we had when it comes to science. We think about the development of the world, and it started out that the earth was flat. It started out that the earth was round and the solar system, but the earth was the center of the solar system. The skies were everything revolved around the earth, and then all of a sudden the sun became the center of the solar system. And then all of a sudden we find out that there's much more than just the sun, and that there's entire galaxies. And so it took us a long time to get to that point. Okay, so when we look at myths, don't think about them as, oh, silly. It's what they did to understand things. And it's sometimes, when you think about it, it's what kids do when they don't understand something. They'll make up a story about it. The only thing with myths is that they made up a story and then people wrote it down, and eventually everyone started hearing it. Okay, this is a difference. All right. So our I believe it's Narcissus. Okay, so why don't you take some time, pause the video, and read this story on Narcissus. You can either read it from the video, just pause the video right now, or you can go and get the Text for Closed reading book, and it's going to be on page 72. But regardless, pause the video and read the story. I will talk to you when you are done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you took some time to read the story. And then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take some time and I'd like you to answer the questions that are in the packet. The questions are the discussion questions. In paragraph 1, the author writes that many women admired Narcissus and vied for his attention. What do you think the word vied means in this paragraph? Look for clues to help you define this word. Next one. A rejected nymph wants Narcissus to feel unrequited love. Why? How does she feel about him? Why is it important for readers to understand this character's feelings? Use information in paragraphs 2 and 3 to support your answer. Number 3. Study the illustration of Narcissus. What do you notice in it? How does the illustration help you understand the text better? How does it contribute to the tone or beauty of the myth? And then finally, what message does this myth have for readers? What lesson can we learn from what happened to Narcissus? All right, so again, pause the video, answer the questions, and then when you are done, restart the video and we will move on. All right, fifth graders, hopefully you've read the story and now you've answered the questions and now we are ready. Let's look at Thor's magic hammer again, and I will read that to you. Long ago, Thor, the Norse god of thunder, was shocked to discover that his magic hammer was missing. Without it, he couldn't create thunder and lightning. Thor asked Loki, a shape-shifting god, for help. Loki turned into a falcon and flew off to look for Thor's hammer. He learned that the king of the giants had stolen it. The king would return it if he could marry Freya, the goddess of love. When Loki presented the giants' terms, Freya refused to marry a hideous giant. The gods held a meeting to figure out what to do. They decided to trick the giant in order to retrieve Thor's hammer. They said Thor would pretend to be Freya. Thor reluctantly dressed in bridal clothes and a veil. Loki disguised himself as a maidservant, and the two set off. At a pre-wedding feast, the king of the giants was amazed at the appetite of his bride-to-be. When he lifted the veil, he saw Thor's eyes glowering angrily at him. Loki told him the bride had not slept in anticipation of the wedding. The giant believed Loki and called for the magic hammer to be brought to bless his bride. At the sight of it, Thor ripped off his disguise, grabbed the hammer, and killed the giant king with it. Thor killed every giant in the banquet hall, too. Then Thor and Loki went home. To celebrate the return of his hammer, Thor created the fiercest thunder and lightning storm the world had ever seen. Okay, so that's Thor's magic hammer. All right, now let's review Narcissus. Back in the time of the Greek gods, Narcissus was the handsomest man in Greece. Many women admired him and vied for his attention. Nymphs, the young maiden spirits of nature, longed for him too. Narcissus knew how handsome he was and what effect he had on people. His personality, however, did not match his looks. He thought very highly of himself and did not care about others. He rejected every admirer, not bothering to be kind about it. Narcissus broke many hearts. One rejected nymph prayed that he too would feel unrequited love. The goddess Nemesis heard and answered her prayer. While hunting one day, Narcissus leaned over a pool of water to get a drink. For the first time he saw his own reflection, but, thanks to Nemesis, he did not know he was looking at himself. He fell instantly in love with the image he saw. He reached out to touch it, but it remained beyond his grasp. Eventually, Narcissus realized he was looking at himself. Now I know how others have felt, he cried. I know what it feels like to pine for love you cannot have. Narcissus stared and stared at his reflection, never moving from the pool. He eventually died there, and a handsome flower we know as the Narcissus grew in his place. All right, so now we've read both stories, or reread both stories. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to make connections across the text. I'd like you to look at and compare and contrast Thor's magic hammer and Narcissus, answering the questions. How are the characters of each myth alike? How are the characters of each myth different? Do you feel any connection to any of the characters? If so, which ones and why? What features of the genre does each myth include? Now, you might have to go back to your web of features of myths to help you with that. And then, why should people read this myth? Okay. All right. So we can compare and contrast myths to see how they are alike and different. We can analyze the characters, the structure of each myth, and the important themes and lessons these myths hold for people. To compare and contrast myths, we will look for information in both texts, okay? And that's what we want you to do. We want you to focus on that and see in terms of how you can find, all right? So when you're done, just, take care of this. So why don't you pause the video and work on this, and then when you're done, restart the video, and you'll hear some parting words from me. All right, fifth graders. Today we compared and contrasted two myths. We found similarities and differences between the characters, the events, and the themes in these myths. Remember that all myths have certain features in common, and you can use your knowledge of these features to help you as you read. All right, that's it.